Hey, special people and places. Today I am in Carbon Hill, Alabama on another fossil hunt. And we're fortunate that Dr. Ron Buda from the University of Alabama has been up here in a dig, and he's going to show us what he's found today.
A lot more plants, but I'm looking to see if there might be a fern.
You did find some things today, didn't you, Dr. Buda?
Yes, I was exploring the rock piles at this surface mine, and I found fossil animal tracks from the coal age. A lot more plants, but I'm looking to see if there might be a fern. You know.
One beauty today. That fern was just beautiful.
Let me go here. Beautiful ones.
We are so excited because Bonnie Groves, she's the director of the Alabama Mining Museum, and she came with us to meet Dr. Buda and see if we could get some track waves maybe for the Mining Museum. Tell us about the Mining Museum, Bonnie. What are your hours of operation?
Okay, the Alabama Mining Museum is in Dora, Alabama. Our hours, we're closed on Monday. We're open Tuesday through Friday. Our hours are normally from 9 to whenever. We're very flexible. We have, special groups that want to come in, so we might even have to go back in later and do those. We have our school kids. We have a lot of our senior citizens from the churches. And one day I had my little nephew there with me, and I said to him, Sam, we got senior citizens today. And he said, well, Mama Sue, aren't you one? I said, no, we're not talking about that. We have most everything we have in the museum was donated by local people. And it's just a delightful place. And we have a lot of people to come back that graduated high school there on the site. And they love to come back and
that's
visit
right.
the museum. Yes.
It was a former high school.
That's exactly right. And we're in the former gym where they played basketball.
Oh, I see. What was the last year it was used as a school, Bonnie? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. I think probably in the 50s. They condemned the school, and then it later burned. So the gym was left, and so the gym was built during the WPA days. It was all it's rock. It's
solid. It's a solid building.
It's a solid building. It was in the school or in the gym that they played.
When did the Mining Museum open? It was the 80s?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I've been there, well.
Okay.
But I have been there quite some time. And it's just delightful. I enjoy it. I enjoy the people. I enjoy all the kids that come.
Well, it is. Everything about the mining industry is there. Even how the people lived, the mine workers, their home, and you can see it all there.
The commissary, and the houses, like where they lived, and. So 3 years ago, Dinah Pozak, that lives in Dora, she retired from T.S. Boyd. She'd been teaching there for many years, and so she came to work with me. And it's even made it special plus now with her there with me, because her being a school teacher, we have the little one-room schoolhouse, and so she does the school, and I do the tours in the gym.
Now, of course, Bonnie, the school groups, you need to have a call to arrange that.
We ask that you make reservations ahead of time, because we need that time, because this is, when school's in session. And we have some of our people, actually, they make their reservations, like maybe in the summer for the fall, and because we don't want to overlap someone. So, and our phone number is 205-648-2442.
Well, it's well worth the trip, and everyone enjoys it so much.
Yeah, and we have the depot there, the depot that came from Oatman. down, and it's
And an engine.
and we have the old steam engine that never left Walker County.
Yes, that steam engine that was on the railroad there in Jasper.
That's exactly right. And then we have the little one-room post office that came from down below Jim Walter Mines. It was down at Brookwood. So actually, you know, we have several things there on the site.
Well, it's well worth the trip. Dr. Buda, have you been there?
I have heard of the museum, but I haven't been there.
Oh, you must go. But
I'd like to.
you'll have to come when you can bring the children, even if it's summertime.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Bonnie, now you are open during the summer,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Year-round.
Year-round.
Except holidays, of
That's
course.
right. You know, Thanksgiving or Christmas or, you know, all of our holidays. Of course, we close on the holidays.
But if children are out of school, you could call the Mining Museum and see what your schedule is for their vacation during the holidays.
They please call us first, because I said, you know, it's a little hard sometimes, and we sort of get overlapped there.
Okay. This is Margaret Lee, Special People and Places. We are at the Alabama Mining Museum over in Dora, Alabama, and Dr. Ron Buda. And Ron, we know paleontology is your hobby, your passion, but now you're a professor of
Astronomy and physics.
And we are so glad that this is your hobby, right, Bonnie? Bonnie is the director of the Alabama Mining Museum. Bonnie, what a great addition, isn't it?
I'm just so excited, Margaret, and Dr. Thank you so much. I'm just real excited. The day that we've looked for some of these, it was one of the best days I've ever had. And now is that day.
Well, this is so fitting that the Alabama Mining Museum has these examples. Now, Dr. Buda, you told us that you started looking for fossils. It was after the Union Chapel find, wasn't it? That you wanted to get.
The Union Chapel mine was discovered to be what we call a trace fossil site, a site which is rich in fossils that are in the form of markings in the rock due to the behavior of animals that lived in the area. They left their trails, they left their marks, their behavior in the mud that was later buried quickly and eventually solidified into rock and was preserved for many hundreds of millions of years until mining operations broke up those rocks. So the Union Chapel mine, which is near Jasper, was found to be rich in those kinds of fossils in 1999. Carbon Hill was actually where trace fossils were first discovered in Alabama. I mean trace fossils in the form of trackways.
Yes, and when they first brought it to the attention.
That's right. There was a mine called the Galloway Number 11 mine near Carbon Hill, and the workers had noticed that there were tracks in the rocks there for many years before professionals ever got around to actually taking them seriously.
And that was in the 1920s, Bonnie, and this was a thrill for me because my grandfather actually worked in that mine. James Wright.
In the 1920s.
In the 1920s.
What is that?
Found in they're most dramatically displayed, I should say, in the ceilings of some of the mine tunnels in the Galloway Number 11 mine. So people would be looking up to see the tracks, not down. Because the mining operation was looking for a particular coal, and the tracks were actually in the rocks above the coal they were mining. And so when they removed the coal, the tracks would appear above where they had excavated, and so you'd see tracks in the ceiling.
And remind us again that no place else in the world, really, the Syncosaurus that they named that day was found.
Yes, Syncosaurus, at least right now, appears to be unique to Alabama. I know
Walker County, right?
Walker County, right. I believe that researchers suspect that they have found similar things elsewhere, but I haven't seen anything saying. See, some of it's been exposed for too long.
And it is so fragile, isn't it, Ron?
But you see, I'm opening it up like pages of a book. Anywhere else is very much rarer than they are here. Syncosaurus cobbe loved this area in Alabama when those animals were alive.
Because of the ocean coming up so far, right?
There was an inland sea that came close to this area, and the mountains were in the area too. The mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, which you can't even see very well from Alabama now. They're highest on Mount Chia today, but the Appalachians were much higher when those animals were alive than they are today. And the rivers would carry sediment from those mountains into that inland sea and build up the deposits that became the Pottsville Formation, which includes the tracks.
And this is the Black Warrior Basin.
Black Warrior Basin.
Now, when Bonnie and I joined you a week or two ago, what was that? I mean,
any rocks near Carbon Hill that have tracks are almost certainly coming from above the Jagger coal seam. As long as the layers aren't too thick and the rock isn't too solid, this should work. There does seem to be some sort of thing there, a piece that wasn't exposed. Which is the lowest coal seam of 4 coal seams in the Mary Lee coal zone, which is beautifully exposed in Alabama and apparently not in Mississippi or Georgia, at least not as well, so that I haven't seen many papers, or maybe I only saw one thing about tracks in another state, and it was about one trackway, and not dozens of them. So
this is so exciting.
The Mary Lee coal zone is and it's in the middle of the Pottsville Formation. It seems to be where the tracks are coming from. So it's telling us about a time when those animals were leaving their tracks. They were very active, and something preserved them.
Now, these exhibits you brought today, are these more near Carbon Hill?
These are from near Carbon Hill. So these
now
are
you started looking in Carbon Hill. I believe you said 2011. It was
2011. I was working on a book about the Union Chapel mine with my geology coworker, David C. Kapaska Merkel, and I told David that I was curious to go and see where the tracks were first discovered. I wanted to go to Carbon Hill and see what was left of the old number 11 mine, to see if it was just for perspective. Mm-hmm. We were writing a book about the tracks in Alabama, and I hadn't ever been up there, and so I didn't know what to say about Carbon Hill. So I went up there, and that's when I found that there were tracks. You could still find them.
Well, that's what thrilled me, and I couldn't wait to pass it along to Bonnie.
I've been so excited about this. I just could not wait for you to bring them up. And
well, I was going to say that sometimes you can just go to a particular site and you might see tracks facing this rock. How can I find some? Okay, see, there's more layers right there. Now I found some small tracks. I could see them, but getting them out as a trackway was really, really hard. Right up in the sunshine, you say, "Oh, there they are." But most of the time, you've got to work, and when you work, and that what I mean by working, I mean you have to split rocks.
Well, we have you photographed doing that.
You have to split rocks.
Yeah, I was so amazed at that. The way you took the little kitchen knife, and they were so fragile, and the way you just split them up, and there they were.
Split rocks with thin layers. A chisel is too thick. So if you want to get a thin layer out intact, you need to use a very thin knife for that. But I was going to say, the first specimen in the display case is shown here. This was in a rock that was standing vertically. It was in a badly weathered rock, because when these rocks are exposed at the surface for a long time, they weather. But if they didn't weather, you wouldn't find these footprints, because they have to be weathered enough to expose them. If you split the rock before it's weathered, you probably won't find anything.
And you shatter the rock, right?
Destroy the rock, yeah. It needs to. You have to let nature run its course, let it do some weathering. Now, you do the best you can with it, but I remember this rock was vertically standing. I had whacked on it from the side, and then I separated the two halves, and I'm looking down, and I saw that. And I was the first person in the entire history of the human race to have seen those tracks. And so these are the impressions. The counter impression was the mud that filled the impression. It didn't survive the split as effectively as well as this one did. But what you see here.
The Mining Museum has the first one of the ones that you saw, the human race.
Yes. But in any case, you see these beautiful tracks here, and there's two animals in this specimen. One animal is going to my right, and the other one's going to my left from this perspective here. And
the way their toes are pointed,
right? Their toes are curled, and we see both the forefeet and the hind feet, and the forefeet have 5 toes, and the hind feet have 5 toes also, and so that's how it gets its name, Syncosaurus cobbi. It's like it sort of literally means Cobb's 5-toed lizard. I think that's roughly what it means.
Oh, that would be easier for me to say.
A lot of the time, the forefeet are more well preserved than the hind feet, because a lot of the times you see the 5 toes in the forefeet, but you see only 3 in the hind feet, and that occurs in some of these. But I think I see in that couple of tracks the light is shining on, I see 4 toes in the hind foot, one of which is a thumb-like digit. So they did have kind of a thumb. They had a thumb-like digit, but it was kind of like. It's hard. I have to look. I have to show you the picture in Aldrich and Jones to show you exactly what I mean. But I think it was like their toes were, the thumbs were like that on the outside,
thumbs on the outside.
Not on the end when you're walking. I don't think they were like this. It was like they were like that. I think we have to look at the picture to verify that, but that's what I remember. So let's see if I don't know if we can see that here, but these are very deep tracks.
Now, Ron, again, these are called fossil trackways.
They're trace fossils. Yeah, and what they are just depressions in the rock. Like there's no part of the original animal here.
It's just a trace of where they were.
It's a trace of where they were. It's about when they were alive. Bones are about death. Tracks are about life. You don't. At no site in Alabama has anybody ever discovered the bones of the animals that made these footprints. And as a consequence, we don't know precisely what they look like. And the reason you don't find the bones is that they lived near these forests where the soil was very acidic and it would dissolve the bones, because you know that the animals had to live and die in that area. What happened to their bones? They probably were dissolved by the acidic soil. If you find a site that has bones and tracks, the bones are usually left by animals that did not make the tracks and vice versa. It's very rare to find a site where you can actually identify the bones of an animal and you also see the footprints that had to have been associated with that same animal. Maybe there's a site in Germany where you can have that, but that's definitely not the norm for track sites. Like, we have not found any bones of these animals, so we don't know exactly what they look like. We can sort of gauge how big they might have been from how big their feet were and how wide how far apart the feet are on either side. So I would guess that this one here was maybe more, at least a foot long and probably a little more, maybe a foot and a half animal. And you also don't necessarily find the tracks on one layer. Like, there were other layers in this rock that had other tracks, but these are the best preserved of the ones that were in that slab. So anyway, I was the first person. It's always fun because there's this man in New Mexico named Jerry McDonald, and he discovered Permian period tracks in New Mexico due to much bigger animals. And in his book he says, I quote, "I can't think of anything more thrilling than being the very first person to see the footprints made by this long dead animal. because he knew it, and his tracks were not found in spoil piles. They were in situ. They were in position. You knew exactly where that animal was walking with his tracks. We don't know where these rocks were in the rock wall because they were removed by mining operation. But the fellow in New Mexico said he couldn't conceive of anything more thrilling than being the first person to see the tracks of an animal that lived 240 million years ago. And he knew that it was in that place. And the tracks disappeared into a mountain. And you know what it tells you? That the mountain didn't exist when that animal was alive. There was a shoreline there. In fact, tracks are usually found near ancient shorelines. There must have been shorelines where these tracks were found. And in some slabs, you can clearly see animals going every which way, like it was a busy area. There's busyness in some of these things. But you can tell that some areas had a lot of activity. And it was probably shorelines. If you plot the locations of all the known fossil track sites in Walker County and spilling into Jefferson County, they occupy a narrow band. That was probably an outline of the shore. And it's believed now, although it wasn't originally, that all the tracks in Alabama probably date to the same period. We used to think that some of the tracks came from above the Jagger seam and others came from above the Mary Lee. But I think now it's clear that they're probably all coming from above the Jagger. Even in places where the miners thought they were mining the Mary Lee, it's probably the Jagger.
Now, out at Carbon Hill, that was Jagger?
It was Jagger, definitely Jagger, because in Carbon Hill you can see three coal seams: the Jagger, the Mary Lee, the Jagger, the Blue Creek, and the Mary Lee. The Blue Creek is above the Jagger, and there it's about 20 feet above, and then 20 feet above the Blue Creek is the Mary Lee. And then some distance above the Mary Lee would have been the Newcastle, but sometimes it's eroded. I don't remember seeing it in Carbon Hill. And the miners who discovered the tracks were doing underground mining. And so they were mining the Jagger because it was possibly the most economically useful one at the time. And so the other coal seams were still there after all this time. And so new mining operations would try to get the coal that was left behind.
Oh my, Dr. Buda, we're so glad you were curious about that Galloway mine number 11 in Carbon Hill.
Yeah, I am glad, but what I found there was not at all what I expected, because I wanted to go up there, and I had this preconception of what an old underground mine would look like. There would be an opening, all boarded up, say keep out, with railroad tracks coming out. And I thought it would be on somebody's land, and you'd have to get the permission of the mine owner to go look at it. But it was nothing like that. It was a forest. There were ruins that we saw.
Yes, we have that on videotape.
Ruins of old buildings connected with that mining operation, and there was
foundations.
Yes, and there was no opening with railroad tracks coming out saying keep out. I mean, I could not tell where you went into this mine. The entrance was gone.
Oh, I remember, and when I looked at the videotape later, I thought, my, we were not even thinking about snakes, Dr. Buda.
No.
But we didn't see any snakes.
We didn't see any, but it was a little bit uncomfortable because I've seen a map of this mine, and it has hundreds and hundreds of chambers. It was a huge underground mining operation. The Galloway number 11 mine was big. It operated from 1912 to about 1935, so it was there a long time. The tracks were first seen more than 10 years before their existence was acknowledged as being important.
Yes. And that actual paper was dated 1930.
The actual paper was dated 1930. The co-author of that paper, Walter Jones, said in another paper, he said, although the author knew about these tracks at least a decade earlier, he had to give the credit for the discovery to the two geologists who went in 1929. And I found that very interesting that he said that, but he didn't repeat it in the later paper. That he knew about those tracks, but he couldn't claim credit for discovering them because a couple of other geologists went in to take them seriously. Because that's how it all came out. Somebody decided to go in and take a look and do a scientific study of those tracks, and that led to the realization that Alabama has this remarkable paleontological treasure of ancient footprints of animals that once lived when this area was near the equator in the tropics.
In Walker County.
Walker County, yeah. The mountains were high, the world looked different, even the sky looked different. The stars were not the same stars. The stars that you could see in the sky of the Paleozoic era when these animals were alive would not have been the ones that we see today, because that's such a long time ago. Even the sky would have looked different. So the mountains were different, the surroundings were different. They were in the tropics, and the sky was different. Who knows what was in the sky?
Would that explain the song "Stars Fell on Alabama"? I think it goes back to the 30s. We'll have to research that.
I'd like to present, in addition to these tracks, these beautiful fern fossils from Jefferson County.
Thank you so much. Aren't they gorgeous?
These ferns, the reason they look so distinct is because the blackness represents the carbonized remains of the original material. This is the remains of those plants. They didn't leave tracks, but that's their remains.
That's the remain of the
It's
plant.
the remains of the plant.
Plant.
This is carbonized plant material, and it's extremely well preserved.
It's beautiful.
And it's a type of plant, a type of fern called that paleontologists call Sphenopterus pottsvillia. It's just a type of, and it's an extinct type of seed fern. It's a fern that grew by seeds. There are no modern ferns that grow that way. It's an extinct form.
Because I love ferns.
The fossil plant's beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah. It's gorgeous.
People must come and see this.
Yes, I'm excited for them to come see it because I'm excited about having them. Thank you so much.
Can we find a place for them? These are facing the other way. There's two different animals going that way. So it's interesting to find multiple directions.
I'll just say
When you started, looking at Carbon Hill, and that was